Alright guys, with Season 6 and the expansion, a lot of people want to know what are the best rune words for your builds. So let's go ahead and go over the top tier rune words for your builds. Now keep in mind, depending on the class or the build that you're playing, some builds can't make use out of some of these, but there are two in particular that majority of players are running. So to start off with that, the two that are the most popular right now are going to be Ohm and Yugioh. So basically these are the effects. This video is not going to go over how to really utilize the rune words, it's just going over like the effects and the best ones. If you guys do need to understand how it works, I will also link a video in the pin, but basically these are the special powers that's going to give you the most bang for your buck. So Ohm over here is specifically going to activate the Barbarian's Enhanced Warcry, which is going to give you increased movement speed and damage, plus because it is the Enhanced Warcry, you are going to get another benefit. So the regular Warcry over here is just going to give you that increased damage dealt, so you get a 15x multiplier, and then on top of that you get the Enhanced Warcry, which does grant you Berserking. Berserking is going to grant you 25x damage and 15% increased movement speed, so you get basically two benefits off of this. This is why almost everyone runs Ohm in majority of builds. Now keep in mind, if you are already playing the Barbarian, you may not need to run certain things if you're already playing the class, but these are going to be the ones that most people will be wanting to run. So this one's great because it's just numerically the highest stat one. In fact, a lot of builds you may not even need to put in two rune words because you either simply can't use it, or sacrificing 300 to main stat is a pretty big drop off for a lot of builds. But a lot of people can always benefit off of the Ohm legendary invocation over here. Remember, there's ones that are activators, and then there's ones that are like kind of generators. So this is going to be like the one, I'm going to call it an activator. They call it invocation and ritual, but the next one over here is Yugioh. Now this one is going to apply to a lot of builds, because most builds in Diablo or any action RPG, you're going to want to do crit damage, right? So what this does is it gives you the Druid's Petrify, which is going to give you 30x crit damage, or against bosses, you get to increase this even further. If I go to like the Druid over here, you can see it does 30x critical strike damage. Now keep in mind, if you are playing a build like a damage over time or a thorns or anything that cannot actually crit, well then this one simply won't be good for your build, because well that's what it does, it gives you some crit. So keep in mind, it depends on the class that you're playing, but majority of builds would be able to use these two in particular that are going to be pretty much what I consider the S tier. So these are the two in particular that most builds will want to try to slot in. Now of course we also have to have the generators here. We're going to go over some of the better choices, but it depends on the class you're playing. These may not apply to your specific skill. So the next one that I actually really like is Zan. So this is another one over here that is going to, this one's more niche, but it does have a lot of application. So now we're going to get into kind of more of the ones that could be for certain specific builds. So with Zan, what you can do is use a skill that can either be a channeled skill over here. Now keep in mind, channeled skills cannot actually overpower, but being able to have the ability to gain overpower on certain skills that when you activate it will do some sort of ticks. This could be actually very powerful for again, skills that have like a duration and that constantly will tick in damage that can technically crit, or it can even overpower. But on channeled skills, this is still actually a pretty good one if you want to snapshot certain things. Zan can actually give you a good amount of value here. Next up, this is a pretty simple one. It is basically a mini Harlequin. Some builds can upkeep this 100% of the time, which is called Vex. It's going to give you +3 to all of your skills for 5 seconds, but again, you can upkeep this 100% of the time. I like this one a lot, and keep in mind, you can gain ranks to your ultimate skills, which will not only give you cooldown reduction, but that is damage as well, so it can help certain builds try to maintain that ultimate charge up majority of time. Next up, we're going to be talking about some of the activators as well in here. So this is one of like the S tier ones again. This one is Lith. So how it's activating, because remember we have the invocation, which is kind of like your powers, and then you have your rituals, which kind of build them up. So this is one of the ones where it depends on the build that you're playing. If you are playing a build that kind of moves along very fast, like the Dance of Knives, or if you're playing the Barbarian Whirlwind, you're going to be moving, but you can still kind of make use out of this depending on your situation. You can actually still get this even if you're playing a build that does move. But Lith over here, it makes it so when you're standing still, you're going to be building up the like offerings, and it's really good for any build that like holds still to attack. There's tons of builds, you know, like Hoda, we're playing like, let's say, Twisting Blades, Flurry, like you're going to be standing still. And keep in mind, there are certain things in the game that don't actually count you as moving. For example, anything that would break inner calm would kind of apply in the same way. So specifically things like Shadow Step, your rogue is considered still not moving, so it can work with certain things, even though it's not supposed to. My best suggestion would be try to test it out. Maybe your mobility skill keeps your character in place. So Lith is really good for a lot of different builds. Again, it's usually in the boss department where the RuneWords become a lot more powerful. And then Yugioh's also a really good one for an activator, which is just casting any skill with a cooldown, which, you know, most builds, you're gonna cast skills, right? So to build it up, this one is going to be excellent, but if you are playing a build that only has like one button, then yeah, probably not the greatest thing, especially if you're just holding down that one channeled button, which is kind of like maybe like a whirlwind barb or something. But if you are very active in terms of like a player, well, with the barbarian, you still do activate shouts, but I know that there are players out there that just like to play the whirlwind, hold one button. They don't want to do the shouts. I get it. You're a lazy player, then don't run this one. But there are a lot of builds where you can start spamming things like crazy. The lightning spear, you can run the druid debilitating roar shout build. There's so many different builds that constantly spam on skills with cooldowns, and this can definitely help out. Next up, Bach is really good as well. This one is just traveling. You're always going to be moving to progress in the game, with the exception of maybe in the Infernal Hordes, but pretty much this one is going to be really great for specifically like the Dance of Knives. I really liked it for that one. You can also technically run it on like the Whirlwind Barb, but basically it just requires you to move. Keep in mind, moving in a larger area will definitely help out, because if you move at a very small area, sometimes it may not activate. It's specifically with like Dance of Knives that you'll notice that where the charges will go away. So just kind of move in a little bit of a bigger area and you'll get better results with this. Next up, Mott is actually very nice. Even if you're playing Rogue, it does let you not have to require Umbrus. You can actually just throw it in a weapon. By the way, putting your RuneWords in weapons in most circumstances is going to be way better than putting the RuneWords in your armors. And the reason why is because, well, you lose out on 300 of your main stat, which is actually a pretty big thing to skip out on. Let's give you guys some extra gameplay. We'll give you guys some of that Dance of Knives rogue since we were talking about it. So what this allows you to do is you can put it on your weapon, and that way you don't have to run the Umbrus aspect. So what you can do is you can run like the balls, you can run other things that you normally would not have been able to run, and this is quite nice for that. And also for any other builds, if you do need survivability, Mott is a great one. Dark Shroud gets to kind of build up too, because you can hold multiple of them, and then you can get some like different little bonuses depending on, of course, what you are playing, and it's just a nicer thing to have for survivability. And then there's also Quacks over here. So this one over here, it makes it so your next non-basic skill cast spends all of your resource, and on a lot of different builds, you can use this basically to snapshot if it's a channeled skill. Again, I'm teaching you guys how to like do some of these things that really give you good value, specifically this one over here. Again, 100% increased damage is no joke, and again, if it's some skill that can last a duration, whether it's like an ultimate or a skill that you can again snapshot, great stuff indeed. Next up though, we also have Zek. This one can be good in the earlier stages if you're really trying to make a build to maintain your ultimate, and you can run the ones where like you just stand still and just start building it up. If you're playing maybe a necromancer build and you're like, I just want to spam Army of the Dead, and you just want a relaxed chill play style, you can run this one, sit in the back, and then you're just going to have extra ultimate cooldown reduction, which could be good. And if you really want to push it further, you could maybe even throw in Flicker Step, and then you can make an ultimate build with the new Soul Rift. So there's a lot of ways to make your ultimates at 100% uptime. This is a great one to mess around with as well. And then Zal's actually a pretty nicer one. Now this is where it gets a little bit more niche. Sure, it's great for survivability. 20% maximum life is something that we kind of lost out on usually where we would have 2 sockets. We would normally throw in the rubies. If you really need extra survivability because all these numbers got squished, you can use Zal specifically to get that extra life that you're missing out on. Again, throw it in your two-handed weapon and you're going to be able to be a lot tankier, which is good. But there are some builds like the Thorns Barbarian, or even if you're playing like the Druid, the more HP that you have, the more bonuses you get on the legendary node, between like the difference in HP in the Paragon board for, of course, like a Werebear Druid. So there are other uses for certain things. Don't always look at it like, oh, this is just HP. Sometimes it could also be damage depending on the build. But another like solid defensive one, if I was to give like another suggestion for like a defensive one, these are the ones that I would recommend. And then I felt like Gar was a pretty nice one, especially in the earlier stages, because like you may have something that activates on a crit or something, and this is just a nice easy 25% critical strike chance, which is great. I know it says 2.5, but this ramps up and it's every 5 seconds. It's a pretty quick activation though, so you can consider this one basically like 25% extra crit if you want to go ahead and try to cap out on crit. There's a lot of builds that can benefit off of getting a lot of critical strike damage, or there's a lot of other multipliers. There's a lot of builds, like the Druid has a lot of different multipliers on crit, so getting your critical strike chance up to, 100% can give you a huge benefit in damage. In fact, most builds, getting more crit is more damage at the end of the day, so definitely consider running these. Now, there are going to be some other ones, and I didn't want to make this video going over all like the niche stuff, but checking out some other ones that may have some potential as well. If you are playing certain builds, by the way, I was trying out some of these things because I was like, okay, if I can play as the Necromancer and summon these like Druid wolves, will it count as my summons? There may be things that change from the PTR and the actual live service of the game, because I was trying to make a summoning Necromancer, and then I was adding in the Druid summons with the wolves, but they may not count at the moment. So hopefully some of these things will be changed. But again, depending on your build, there are still awesome other ones, but these are the main ones that I would say that people are kind of looking at, and these are what I would consider the meta ones that you can consider if you are trying to make a very specific build. Though there are other ones, like for example, this one gives you Decrepify, which can slow down enemies, and it can give you some sort of damage reduction. But in most cases, Dark Crouch is going to be much better, because certain things may not actually be able to be slowed. The things that get you killed majority of times in Diablo are going to be like the bosses, or like the red shadow bosses. If you play the pit, those things do big damage. So that's why Dark Shroud is a little bit better than like reducing the enemy's attack, because, well, you can't like target that thing to Decrepify. It just kind of activates as some shadow. So those are my recommendations for you guys if you guys want to know some of the best rune words. And remember, like, it depends on the combo that you are playing, because I suggested running the ones with either, like, let's say the cooldown or the movement, and I don't know what build you're playing, so you guys are gonna have to figure out which rune word fits the best for you. That's why I didn't kind of put them in combos versus I just kind of set them up in the way that I did for the video. But you guys can give me some of your feedback. If there are other ones that I missed out on, definitely let me know down below, as there are other great ones. Like, for example, Tech could be great for specifically the Barbarian, but I wanted this video to kind of go over like all of them as a whole. But anyways, like I said, if there's any other good combos or other great ones, you guys can let me know down below. But thanks for watching, guys. Enjoyed the video. Drop a like on it. And if they do update these, I will let you guys know, and we'll follow up with a future video of what is essentially the meta. But as far as I can tell, these are pretty much the best ones for majority of builds. But anyways, take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.